All right. Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Finding Your Purpose podcast. I have Lisa Bowman here. And yeah, we were talking like a little bit before I hit the record button, and she has an amazing story to share for us. Lisa, would you mind going ahead just kind of giving like a brief like introduction about who you are and what you do?
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me, by the way. I am Lisa Bowman, and by background, I am a architect and a brand evangelist. So I've spent my career working in marketing, building for brands, converting people to brands. And in 2022, actually a few months ago, I added a new title to my resume, which is that of author. I wrote my first book. And released it on Amazon. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's always cool when you make a pivot and do something different, or you do something that you weren't sure if you could do in the first place.
I love it, and I love how like you added that title of like you're like now an author now. It's always a nice feeling to have, and we're gonna dive deeper into that as we go deeper into the podcast. But one question I love asking all my guests is like, how was your childhood life? Like, where did you grow up? But like, what was like your hobbies? Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So I grew up probably your average normal kid. Grew up in Chicago. And, as a kid, I very early developed a love for travel. There's a whole big world out there. And I took my first international trip when I was in high school. And that kind of stoked my love for going to other countries and experiencing their
Mhm.
cultures. And because of COVID, I haven't left the country for almost 3 years. But I'm chomping at the bit to go somewhere. My last trip was actually to Cambodia in summer of 2019. So I love to travel. I love to read, which sounds kind of nerdy, right? Growing up, there were always those book kids who love to read,
Mhm.
but that was me because it was learning for me. And I would kind of be lying if I didn't say that retail therapy is a huge hobby too. I love fashion. I love beauty and wellness stuff. Um, so I have aspirations one day later in life of maybe being a fashion blogger
Mhm.
and content creator. But yeah, I am working out. Like I love to work out. I've always worked out since I was a kid. But I love to be outside. I love to be active. I love to move my body because I think that's a gift that we have every day.
Mhm.
And sometimes we forget about that. It's really easy to camp out on the couch with a bag of potato chips
Oh yeah.
or some Twizzlers, right? And go, yeah, I'll get up and do something later. But for me, I got to move my body. So
The
my
same way.
40th birthday gift to myself, and I'm probably going to age myself here, but my 40th birthday gift to myself was to get certified as a kickboxing instructor, just to prove that I could do it.
All right, I like
So
it.
yeah,
I love how you're sure, like inside the house it's nice on like those rainy days, but like when it's sunny, we got to be outside doing
got to be
something.
outside. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Gotta be outside moving my body, and if I'm not doing it outside, I'll do it inside. So I usually start my day with a workout because sometimes the day can slide away from you.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, right, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it is, you're like, I don't think I'm gonna work out. So for me, that's mission number one in the morning. Get up, do it, make sure I check that box, and then if I've got it in me, sometimes I do a second one.
Mm. Wow, that's yeah, that's insane. For me, I'm doing workouts. I can't do them in the morning. I have to do mine in the evening. I don't know. I guess I'm a night owl. I guess that's the way. Like I guess like how I do it.
I used to be a night workout person, and then what I found is that with my travel schedule from work, I was traveling a ton,
Mhm.
and sometimes I just wasn't getting it in. And like some people, if they don't eat, they get hangry. For me, if I don't work out, I just get mean. I have to work out. So I was like, you know what? The only way to make sure this happens is by doing it in the morning. Like I get up
Mhm.
and that's my time for me in the morning before I start my day.
Mhm.
So the phone goes away. I'm completely focused on that workout, on my body, on taking that time for me because during the day, I give a lot of me to other people.
Mhm.
So that's my time in the morning.
I love that mindset. Just kind of like being just like self-care, like just like focusing on yourself, put yourself as like a number one priority. I love that.
You have
I
to.
want to
I
say,
mean, if I'm going to be my best self and give as much as I can of me to other people, I have to take care of me. And
hmm
so that starts like some people get up, they journal in the morning, some people get up and meditate or they do affirmations, but for me, it's getting up and moving my body and kind of recognizing the gift that's my
hmm
ability to do that and building strength. And I would say that over the past couple years, that building strength has been really, really important to me,
hmm
given the journey that I've been on. There were a lot of times when I really didn't feel very strong, but
hmm
working out and developing that physical strength, I think also helped with my mental strength.
hmm That's crazy how you say that, because I'm only 21 years old. I'm still not too far out of high school, but like I love running, but I always hated track. I love cross country, and I guess the reason behind that was because like with cross country, once you start running, you don't stop until you're at that 5 mile mark, 7 mile mark, or 10 mile mark or whatever. But with track, I'd always I could do it, but I never liked how like I give it my all and then I stop for like 2 or 3 minutes and then keep on doing that like 10 times. I'd always I don't know, I guess like my workouts kind of reflect how I think, and like just kind of like it's it's crazy how it I don't know, I guess like that affected my like I guess like mental process, the way how I did things, and also it's literally running away from my problems, so it's helped me mentally. That's what I like saying for that. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting how you say that.
it's funny how a workout can sort of be a metaphor for what you're dealing with, right? You talked about not running in circles on a
hmm
track, right? But running linear cross
hmm
country and maybe running away from problems.
Yeah.
For me, the workout is really about building that physical strength to make sure that I had the mental strength.
Mhm.
So I think in a way, sometimes that's just a metaphor for how we're managing stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy how I took this one self-development course. It said like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And when you look at it, it's so true. Yeah. But it's crazy because I was listening to a podcast 3 days ago, and for like it was 4 hours long, and for a big segment of it, they're talking about workouts. And I was like, oh, I'm not interested in workouts, but I never thought I'd catch myself talking about it on my own
And here
podcast.
we
But
are.
I know, right? But yeah, I guess I want to go, I guess like more into like the reason why I got you on here to talk about your book, Harasshole. Am I saying that right, by the
You are.
way?
You
All right,
are.
yeah. I was doing some pronunciation before hopping the camera just to make sure that, and your name, to make sure I had that correctly. But I guess like as you're progressing through your professional career, because I was looking through your website, and you said you were like doing your dream job, and then like as you're going through career, like um some roadblocks came up which inspired you to like inspired like I guess like write the book Harasshole. Could you elaborate more on that as far as like what
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so just by way of background, right? And I know we've jumped around a lot, but I spent 15 years at UPS in a variety of senior level marketing roles. And for my last 5 years, I was in the UPS Foundation. So when we talk about purpose, right, I had kind of found mine. I had this awesome intersection in my job of purpose and profit, using the funds of a big Fortune 50 company to do good in the communities that UPS worked in and that
hmm
UPSers lived in. But fast forward, I got recruited from that job by United Way, which is, for people that may not know it, United Way is the world's largest nonprofit. They are a $4.5 billion global nonprofit that
hmm
works in three areas: health, education, and financial stability. And I wasn't looking to leave UPS, but this was honestly like my dream job, to go use what I do as a marketer to make sure that somebody somewhere that I was never going to meet probably was going to have a better tomorrow because of the work that I did today or yesterday to market the organization, to raise funds, to enable us to do our programming. And so I left UPS, I took this job. It was honestly like I was loving life.
hmm
Did not care that I was working 60 to 70 hours a week, right? It didn't feel
hmm
like work because I loved what I was doing. And so about 2 years into my job, um, I was asked to interview a candidate for a role on our executive team, somebody that would have been a peer to me. And when I interviewed this person, he was really inappropriate during the interview.
Mhm.
A lot of red flags came up, and I shared that with my boss, who was the CEO of the organization, and they proceeded to hire him anyway. And from the minute that this guy started, and I was going to say gentleman, but that would be a complete fabrication if I were to
Yeah.
refer to him as gentleman. But from the minute that he started, he began to harass me. It was always comments about my physical appearance, never about my work product or the value that I brought or a thought process, always about how I looked. Um, and so fast forward, I had two young women on my team, women of color, that came to me in early 2019 and shared with me that they had both had experiences with this person as well.
Mhm.
I'd been dealing with this for about 15 months, had just tried to navigate it on my own. But when these two women came to me, that was the point where I had to go to HR for two reasons. Number one, I was obligated to by policy, right? We
Mhm.
had a policy that said if you even suspected harassment or if anybody brought it to you, you had to go to HR. And if you didn't do that, then there would be consequences for you, up
Mhm.
to and possibly including losing your job. So by policy, I was obligated to do it, but by person, I was obligated to do it too. Right? These
Mhm.
were young women of color. This guy was an older white male. And
Mhm.
quite frankly, they weren't going to go to HR. They weren't going to raise the issue. He was way senior to them. They were terrified. And, for me, even if I hadn't been obligated by policy, when I have young women on my team that are faced with this, and particularly young women of color against a white man,
Mhm.
um, from a leadership perspective, I felt like it was incumbent on me to make sure that HR protected them.
Mhm.
And so I went to HR, was told that they would handle the situation. 2 weeks later, this guy crossed a line with me, and I ended up having to go back to HR on my own behalf.
Mhm.
And from that minute on, I had a target on my back from the CEO who spent the better part of 2019 retaliating against me for
Mhm.
raising an issue with, his boy, and trying to get me to quit. So it was
Mhm.
everything from taking my staff away, but not taking the work away, cutting me out of key meetings, just everything that this guy could do to try and get me to quit. But,
Mhm.
I think he miscalculated because he didn't understand how I'm wired. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wasn't about to quit. So when he couldn't get me to quit in early 2020, as his final act of retaliation, he terminated me.
Mhm.
Um, and I found myself for the first time in my life out of a job for no reason other than I had done the right thing and followed process. And this literally happened like 3 weeks before the world tilted sideways with COVID
Mhm.
in March of 2020. And so, we talked a minute ago about working out and building that strength. As the world kind of closed up, my classes from my gym moved online to Zoom, which gave me the
Mhm.
ability to actually start working out more. And that was really important to me in that time because I had just had this massive change happen to me professionally. And then we had all this craziness going on in the world,
Mhm.
right? With this disease that basically stuck everybody in their houses.
Mhm.
Um, so, it was a pretty tumultuous year, but all of that said, um, I had somebody come to me in 2021. There was a lot of media coverage on the case, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
Mhm.
as a result of that media coverage, I had a publisher come to me and ask if I wanted to write a book. And initially, I kind of laughed and I sent them away. I was like, thank you
Mhm.
so much for reaching out, but write a book? No, I'm absolutely not doing
Yeah.
that. And they were like, "Well, why not? We think this is really important." And I said, "Well, like 3 reasons. Number 1, I'm not a public figure. Like nobody knows who I am. why would I write this book and who's going to read it? Second thing is that I didn't know if I wanted to walk back through the whole experience again emotionally. And the third thing was, and as a content creator, I'm sure you can relate to this, right? When you talk about content, it's no different with a book. I'm like, talk to me about content. What's the word count? How many pages are we talking about? What does
Mhm,
writing a book look like? And they said, oh, probably like 200 pages, 50,000 words.
mhm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't write that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of content, right? So you talked about listening to a 4-hour podcast. That's a lot of content.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't think I've got that in me, but thank you so much for calling. And if I change my mind, I'll hit you up.
Mhm,
And so I sent them away. And then a few weeks later, I woke up on a Monday morning, like I'll never forget this. I woke up on a Monday morning, had my cup of coffee, had my laptop, had finished my workout, by the way.
mhm,
And I was like, maybe I should write my story down just to help me as a narrative with remembering key details because all of my stuff that I had about it was more formal documentation, right? It was notes about this happened on this day or whatever, but not in a story format that would allow me to share that story with somebody, either
mhm.
written or spoken in narrative form. And so I started writing that morning. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I wrote 5,000 words that day.
Man.
Yeah, it just
My
like it
wait,
just
wait, hold
poured.
on, write or type?
Typing.
Okay, all
But
right.
it just, yeah, not handwriting. So when I say writing, right, it's like old school, but yeah,
Yeah.
typing. But anyway, I literally wrote 5,000 words that day and I couldn't stop. And so that was on a Monday. By Thursday, I had written 15,000 words. And I contacted the publisher and I said, "Hey, I still don't think I want to do a book, but I've written something. And in case I change my mind, would you look at it and tell me what you think?" And so I sent it to them. They came back and they were like, yeah, it's exactly what we had in mind. Like, please keep going and let us know if you change your mind." And so I kept going and I kept writing, typing. And in July of 2021, I had enough of a draft that I decided I was actually going to do this. Um, Not from the perspective of necessarily outing my former employer, but more from the perspective of sharing my story so that other people could recognize that story if they were on a similar journey and understand how to navigate it. I had learned a tremendous amount in the course of what I went through
Mhm,
that I didn't know. And I was like, in here, there are lessons. Like, you don't go through a sexual harassment experience and not come out of that with learning and value. Because if you don't, right, then it makes that experience just a really horrible experience. And that's not to say it wasn't horrible, but if I couldn't figure out a way to find value or purpose in what I went through, then it was just a really meaningless bad experience. If I could find some value or find something in it that would help me or help others, then that experience had a purpose and it had some meaning.
mhm.
And that's really what led me to write the book.
I love it, and I love how you, kinda like that last little bit you were saying about, like, when you, if you go through something and you don't learn something from it, and more importantly, share what you learn with other people, like, what's the point of even going through it? As you were
Yeah.
saying that, I went through, like, it's like a bad relationship, like, 3 years ago. It's kinda like probably not on the same level as the situation you were in, but, like, there was that phase where I had, like, went through it, kinda wanted to be quiet about it, like, just wanted to, like just like the denial phase, and after the denial phase, I started writing things down because I was afraid of, um I don't know, like, I'm a weird person, like, I gotta write stuff down because 'cause I'm afraid I'm gonna forget, like, just, like, those small key details, like, kinda like that really makes a story, and as I'm writing it down and, more importantly, observing other people around me going through that same situation, I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I gotta go. I gotta start sharing my story." So that's crazy how you you yeah, with that same, process, not same situation, but, like, same process in a different situation.
So I know you're doing the interview, but my question for you is what did you learn from your experience?
It's a long story, but like to really sum it up, just really looking for like as you're saying, those red flags. So you remember how you're saying when you're at when you're interviewing this potential candidate, right? Just he was just dropping like red flags all over the place. And if you really ignore those have like uh I don't want to say sets the conditions for the relationship, but just like ignoring those red flags, you're gonna pay a lot, long story short. So long, yeah. So yeah, like don't ignore those red flags. They're
So now
really
you know what
important.
to look for next time, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
So that
Yep.
experience held value to you. It was educational and you learned something, right? Sometimes it's tough to go through it when you're in it, but when you look back and you're like, you know what? There was value in that because I got something out of it. I learned what those red flags are and I learned what I will or won't put up with
Mm-hmm.
or accept in the next relationship.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Yep, that's what I learned from that. So as you're, I guess like as you're going through the book writing process, were you afraid of like any like pushback or criticism as you were like speaking your voice?
Yeah, I think I think anytime you share something about yourself, you put yourself in a position of vulnerability. And for me, I'm one of those people that I don't like, you won't see what's happening, right?
Mhm,
So I was showing up for work every day during all of this, smile on, doing my job 110%, but
mhm,
inside dying because I was dealing with this, right?
mhm,
And so I think that this notion of putting myself out there, of writing the book,
mhm,
of exposing a crack in what looked like, oh, here's this person at the pinnacle of her career, and like I would have people say, "Oh my gosh, I'm seeing what you're doing on, LinkedIn or something, and your life looks amazing." But you
mhm.
never really know what's happening on the inside. And so I think there's always that fear of feeling vulnerable, of feeling like you failed.
Yeah.
In this situation, right, with sexual harassment, I think the big thing is that you worry about people thinking, well, she must have done something to bring that
Mhm,
on. Um, right? And having spoken with so many women that have been through this, that's real, right? We gaslight ourselves into thinking, did I do something to send off a wrong signal? Did I wear something? And let me tell you, like, it doesn't matter what signal you sent off. It doesn't matter, candidly, what you wear. We all have a right to a safe and dignified workplace, free
mhm.
of harassment and discrimination and all of the other crap that happens in a workplace. So, yeah, it was a little scary. But I think that what got me through it was the knowledge that I knew or suspected. I don't think I knew. I suspected that that content would be helpful to somebody
Mhm,
somewhere,
mhm,
right? And that made it worth taking that risk for me.
mhm,
Because when I went public with the story in November of 2020, immediately, and that was scary, like
mhm,
really scary. All of a sudden, this is all over the media. I hadn't even told my dad what had happened. My dad just thought I got laid off from my job.
mhm,
I didn't tell him what had happened. And so the night before all the media broke, I had to call my dad and I'm like, "Listen, there's going to be stuff in all the media tomorrow." I'm like, this is what happened.
mhm,
That was really, really hard for me to do. And so I think that after the media broke and I started to have people reach out to me and say,
mhm,
"Oh my gosh, like me too. Thank you so much for speaking up," or "I wish I was that brave." That gave me some strength too. Right.
mhm,
And so with the book, it wasn't quite as scary, I think, as the initial launch in the media, but um, I think I got my strength from the people that came to me and told me that I had helped them. And again,
mhm,
that makes it all worth it, right? Sometimes you have
mhm,
to take a risk and put yourself out there in the spirit of helping somebody else. And that was really the why, the purpose behind the book.
mhm. I love how you say how just like once that first person comes to you and like the words that came out of your mouth, not no one else's, but like your mouth, and like just watching it, like they came to you like, yo, like I like because of you, I was able to get out of the situation or get to my desired situation, whatever. It just um sounds like you went through that experience. I went through that experience too. In other ways, it just makes you just like when you go to bed at night, you just feel like you're important in the world, that like you have like a purpose to be here and like people
Mhm.
to help out. And I guess my next question for you is you don't have to share like any like specific stories, but like what were like some of like your favorite stories that like stood out to you as far as the people just coming up to you, whether it be like in person or like digitally.
Yeah, it's almost all of it's been digital, right? Because of COVID.
Mhm,
But I would say that the very first text that I got after the media broke, right? So there were kind of these two flashpoints. One was the media,
mhm,
the second was the book. But the first flashpoint for me with the media is the very first text that I got was from a young woman who worked at the same organization, actually worked on my Harasshole's team and
mhm,
left under some very suspicious circumstances. And
mhm,
I always suspected that he had created an issue with her too. Um, the very first text that I got when that media broke was from her. And what she said was, "Thank you for giving a voice to all of us who had to remain silent." So that kind of confirmed my suspicion that he had been harassing her as well.
mhm,
Um, After the media broke, there was also a scenario where more than 20 former female employees wrote a letter to the board and basically said to the board, you know what? The experiences that we read about are not unique to Lisa. During our tenure at that company, and none of them had worked there when I was there. So they'd all had these experiences with different people because my Harasshole was not there when they were there. But this
mhm,
speaks to the CEO and the culture that he emboldened within that place. But these 20
mhm,
women came forward, wrote a letter to the board, and basically said each of us has either personally experienced or witnessed this very same behavior. And this has been going on for decades. And so, again, none of them spoke up. Um, so the fact that number one, there was some validation from me that like this had been going on for ages. And number two, that those women didn't speak up. And I had been able to finally bring a voice forward for what they had endured was really important to me. And then with the book, I would say that there has not been a single week, and sometimes there are days every week
mhm,
that I get a message from somebody that tells me that they read the book, it's helped them in some way, it's inspired them, it's empowered them. And
mhm.
like that's what I did this for,
Yep.
right? And sometimes I get those messages, um, and it just like it almost makes me want to cry because like my
Mhm,
heart is full, right? And
mhm,
when you find your purpose and you realize that we have this whole big world, right? And through this awful experience that I went through,
mhm,
I have the ability to reach out to somebody I don't know and impact them in a positive way, like, that's crazy to me, crazy
mhm,
amazing. Um, but that's, like, the coolest thing to me, right? Is that because of digital today and social, like, I don't know this person, but they heard about the book, they bought the book, it helped them in some way, and now they're connected with me.
mhm,
And it makes you realize that as big as the world is, the world's actually really small because I've just found somebody else that's had the same experience
mhm,
as me that I never would have met if it wasn't for sharing that experience.
mhm. What you gotta do is you gotta take all those just like thank you messages, these success stories, you gotta like go in your bedroom and just like have like a wall so you wake up in the morning. And it's just like just like your like I don't know. For me, I have a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. So by me seeing that on my wall, I'm like, shoot, I got people to go help you
Exactly.
develop
And for a
that.
while, I was posting them on LinkedIn because I was sharing them, right? And I was like, listen, here's how this is helping other
Mhm,
people. Um, but I also have some of them that are kind of printed out and scattered around, right? So that if I'm having one of those moments,
mhm.
right, we all have bad days, good days, whatever. But if
Yeah.
I'm having a moment, it's like I'll pick up one of those notes and look at it and go, okay, this is my why.
Mhm.
This is why I did this and I helped somebody. So check the box, mission accomplished. Like we're all good.
I love it. I do the same thing as well. I have it both digitally, but I prefer it just like actual like I have like a binder, so I'll just go through it and I'll just keep me going, even on those hardest days. So I
Yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, sometimes you just need that little kick in your ass to pull
Yep.
you out of the funk, right?
Yep. Yep. And then as far as like spreading out your message to the world, you said you're posting on LinkedIn. Do you use like any other platforms?
Really, it's been LinkedIn because that's where the bulk of my followers are,
Mhm,
right? And this is, LinkedIn and Twitter, but I would say primarily LinkedIn. And the reason why, well, I could take this and I could blast it out on Instagram or whatever. Number one, the bulk of my network is on LinkedIn. Number two, I kind of look at this as a business issue, right? It's a social issue, but where it occurs is in the business world. And so almost everybody that's reached out to me has reached out with a story of this happened at work. And that's why I've chosen to really use LinkedIn as the primary channel to share this. Um, again, I think that as a community on LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn it's pivoted in the last couple months, right? People are sharing a lot more personal content on there.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm seeing sort of the criticism that is turning into Facebook. But I think what people need to realize is that the business world has long asked us, right, to bring our best self to work. In recent years, they've talked about bringing your whole self to work. And so there's this intersectionality between personal and professional that
Mhm,
exists, right? If you've got something traumatic going on in your life, um, that plays into how you're performing, how you're showing up at work.
mhm,
And I think that you're seeing people start to bring their whole selves and be very vulnerable on LinkedIn, right? Whether they're talking about, I've hit 100 days of sobriety, or I contemplated suicide last year, or
mhm.
I just got laid off. I need help, right? People are showing their human side. Um, and there are days when I think it can be overwhelming with all of that on LinkedIn, and I don't think that's the original intent of LinkedIn. But by the same token, we're all people, and
Mhm.
workplaces are made up of people. And so I think we all have a responsibility to help each other. And one of the ways that we do that is by sharing experiences.
Mhm.
Now, you can't always do that live today. A lot of people still aren't back in the office. And because of digital, we've gotten to know and meet and curate relationships with people that we never
Yeah.
would have crossed paths with in the physical world. Some of my closest circle now is my digital circle
Same
of
here.
people that some of them I've never met in person, but these are people that I've gotten to know over the past 3 years and that I trust, and that if I
Mhm,
had a problem, I would go to them for help, and yet I've never met them. I've never sat down for a cup of coffee with them.
mhm.
So I think there's a lot of value in that, but the short answer to your question, right? That was a pretty circuitous answer. Short answer to your question was just that I think it's a business issue with harassment in the workplace, and that's where my network was. So
I ask a lot of people that question, and they'll normally say, "Oh, I'm just on Facebook or Instagram, whatever platform." I will do all these sort of like I'll do TikTok and like YouTube as well, but I don't have the time to like it's like some sort of like um I guess you could say excuse, but you gave like a really like probably one of the best answers to that question I asked, as far as like you kind of like knew your audience, the issue they were going through, and you knew where to find them. And sure, you can make an Instagram, TikTok, and you could probably like make an impact there. But like as they say, like 80% of your results comes for like 20% of your efforts. And for you, that's just LinkedIn. So I love that. I love how you focusing on that and identified that, and just doubling down on LinkedIn to really build a following, and not only that, but also spread awareness um, about workplace harassment. And I have two questions for you. How did you grow your following to 10,000 followers on LinkedIn? And what are the different types of like workplace harassment?
Sure, both great questions. So, I'd love to give you the secret sauce for how I grew the followers on LinkedIn, but it just kind of happened organically.
Mhm,
Um, I used to post, and I go in fits and spurts, honestly, right? There are times when I'm really good about posting, and you know this as a content creator,
mhm.
consistency is key, right? You have
Yeah.
to be there all the time. And so what I would say is that there are times when I have the energy and I do it, and I feel like I have something really valuable to say. There are times when I don't do it because I don't feel like I have anything valuable to say, and it would
Mhm,
just be noise, and therefore it's not authentic. And I know that goes against every rule of building a following on social, right? But it's just kind of how I operate. Plus, I'm a people person. Like, I cannot think of a single time that if somebody has messaged me on LinkedIn, I don't respond back to them. Like I always respond back. Even if it's the sales outreach for some service that clearly somebody hasn't researched me and I am never going to use it, they
mhm,
always get a response from me. And it's not just the, click the thing for the queued up response, but I will always give them a personal response and tell them, you know what, thank you for considering me as a potential client for your product, your service, your whatever. There's not an opportunity here. So since time is your most valuable asset, I'd prefer you to invest it somewhere else.
mhm.
Um, and I think because of that, people are like, oh, like so many times people don't even respond to me, but this person responded and they were kind and courteous, and I'm going to follow them. So I think that's part of it. And then your second question was
The different types of harassment within the
harassment in the
workplace. Yeah.
workplace. So, it's there's sexual harassment, there is discrimination, right? You can be harassed on the basis of your gender. You can be harassed based on race. You can be
Mhm,
harassed based on your sexual orientation or identification. I mean, there's a number of different ways that you can be harassed in the workplace, or not ways, but reasons why you can be harassed. The ways that you can be harassed, it can be verbal harassment. Um, somebody making off-color jokes or
mhm,
inappropriate comments. You can be physically harassed, right? Anybody who's touching you, who's rubbing up against you, that doesn't belong in the workplace, right? So there's physical harassment, and then there's behavioral harassment, which are things in the case of sexual harassment. There's a behavior known as elevator eyes, which I suffered from quite frequently with my Harasshole. And that is basically somebody looking at you inappropriately in a way that makes you uncomfortable.
mhm,
This would happen to me a lot. I would get what I refer to as the full body scan, right? So every interaction that I would have with this person, I would always get scanned from head to toe. And it was
mhm,
usually followed up with a comment. And so there's a difference in intonation with your voice and how things are perceived. It's one
mhm,
thing if somebody comes up to you and they said, you know what, like that outfit is really nice. You look super professional today. Versus somebody looking you up and down and saying, I love the way that skirt fits your body. Right? Those are two very different things.
mhm,
Um, and so there's the behavioral things as well. The little nuances that come along with either the verbal or behavioral.
mhm,
Um, and so, all of that, I think people need to recognize it for what it is and recognize that when we go to work, we're there to do a job. And like I said earlier, one of the things for me is I was a member of the executive management team. This was a peer. And my role there was not to provide some sort of visual pleasure for that
Mhm,
individual. It was to be a contributing member of the organization. And so the fact that there were never comments made on, you know what, that was a great idea, or this is working really well, or thanks for your help on that. Congratulations on whatever you just did that worked for us. There was never any of that. So it really devalued me as a professional and a contributor and placed me, objectified me into someone that was just there for this person's pleasure, if you will,
mhm.
right? That there was no value to my being there in their mind, except for whatever gratuitous purpose they had in their brain.
Mhm. Thank you for that answer. Yeah, well, when it came to like workplace harassment, I had like a few ideas in mind, but I didn't realize like how many um it's not like what you say, but like how you say it, like when it's said, and to take into account all that stuff. And not only like just like sexually, but also like race, also religion and all that
Sure.
stuff as well. Yeah.
And one really big thing that most people don't realize is that sexual harassment is not just physical, right? So when I wrote the book, I had a lot of people, men specifically, reach out to me and they were like, "Hey, I just read this book and thank you for educating me because I didn't realize that sexual harassment didn't have to be physical. I thought for it to be sexual harassment, like you literally had to grope somebody, touch somebody." Um, and that's not the case, right? So there are
Mhm,
multiple kinds of sexual harassment, and it doesn't always involve touching somebody. In my
mhm,
case, my harasser hadn't yet touched me. I think given the opportunity, he may have thought about it, but it
mhm,
didn't happen. It was all verbal and behavioral.
mhm. I saw you have where was it at? You had a program called the Empowered Employee Program. Could you talk a little bit more about that? I saw that on your
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, thanks. So I am doing training. You can basically hire me to train you or your employees on how to navigate through workplace issues. So there's really two facets to it. One is for employers to teach employers, right, how to avoid the red flags with hiring somebody that may be a
Mhm,
problem. The second one is for employees. One of the most important things that we can do is to support each other in the workplace. And
mhm,
so, using a technique called bystander intervention training, you can actually help somebody who's being harassed if you see it. We all have an obligation, right, to make our workplaces safer. And so, by using different bystander intervention techniques, you can actually pull somebody out from being harassed. So, for example, if I observe somebody who appears to be in an uncomfortable situation,
mhm,
um, I'm not sure what's going on. I just know that they look uncomfortable, right? One of those techniques is to approach those two people and say to the person, you know what, excuse me, I am so sorry to interrupt. However, something really critical just came up and I need to borrow Mary for just a second.
mhm,
Would you excuse us and get Mary out of that situation?
mhm,
Right? And then tell her, like, I saw what was happening. Do you need help? Is something going on? As a bystander, you can also document what you saw happening
mhm,
and be able to provide that documentation to the person or be able to go to HR and say, listen, I saw something going on, didn't look quite right. You guys may want to know about this.
mhm. And with that, is it like for like small businesses, medium, large?
Anybody. This can happen anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So, small business, medium business, large business, it happens everywhere. So I will train anybody that
Mhm,
is interested in having a safer workplace. Um, so, if you've got a women's group if you're part of a professional association, women in technology, for example,
Hmm.
right? And you want to be trained as a group, even though you all work in different workplaces, hit me up. I'm happy to do that training for you.
And with that training, is it like in person? Is it over Zoom? How many days long is it? Could you
Oh,
go
it's
more into
just
that?
just an hour, and we can do it either in person or we can do it in Zoom. So in person gives you the ability to demonstrate some of these things. On
Hmm.
Zoom, we talk about it a little bit more than we demonstrate it, but it can happen either way.
I like it. And then just for the audience, where can people go to like book you as a speaker, book you for the empowered employee program, and yeah, where can they find you?
My website, which is, this is really easy to remember, harasshole.com.
I like that domain. I just typed it in, and yeah, it was yes, yeah, short, straight to the point. I like it. Good stuff. But
I remember kind of a funny side story, but there was another title that we were considering for the book.
yeah.
And so, as a marketer, like I believe in the power of data and testing things, right? And doing
Hmm.
research. And so initially we had a short list of 5 prospective titles. And I said to the publisher, listen, like we're not going to go out and do formal research on this, but I'm going to test this on LinkedIn. I'm going to run a poll and see what people think about these titles.
Hmm.
And so I ran a poll. The poll got a lot of views. I think it had about 20,000 views, but it
That's a good
had
sample
real,
size.
yeah, yeah, but it had really low engagement.
Hmm.
Like only, I think maybe 120, 130 people
Hmm.
voted on it. And so I went back to the publisher and I said, you know what? I'm like, what this tells me is that people didn't feel very strongly about any of these titles. They didn't engage, they didn't cast a vote or, put their voice on it. I'm like, so we're doing something a little bit different. And by the time I brought this to them, I had already made sure that Harasshole was available. I'd secured the domain. I'd secured all of the social handles for it. And I had filed a trademark application with the Trademark and Patent Office.
Hmm.
And because I got big visions of doing Don't Be a Harasshole merch
Hmm. I love
on the
that.
website. But so I went back to my publisher. I'm like, we're going in a different direction. Like, I've already got the URL, I've got the social handles, I've got a trademark application pending. We're calling this book Harasshole.
Mhm.
And we were on Zoom when we had this conversation,
Yeah.
and I just remember them like staring at me and kind of blinking. I'm like, trust me, I'm a marketer. I'm like, this is what we need to call the book.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't tell you like how many people have come to me laughing about the title, or they're like,
Yeah.
I love the title, but the title really is what it needed to be.
Mhm.
So I have to say, like, I don't often pat myself on the back, but I was pretty proud of that.
I love how you had like the vision for it, like right when you like saw the name, you're like, that's it. You already saw people like using it in sentences, the merch, just like the workshop as if the workshops and everything. I love that.
You got to have a plan. You know that,
Yep,
right? Got to have a
yep,
plan.
yep. I got two more questions for you, and
Okay.
then yeah, we'll wrap this up. But my the first question is, do you have like any exciting plans for the future?
I always have exciting plans for the future. Right, life is too short to not be doing stuff. So,
Yep.
I have a trip to New York in a couple weeks that I'm super excited about. I go to New York a lot. I always say that I'm a native Chicagoan, an Atlanta resident, and a spiritual New Yorker.
Mhm.
So I try and spend a lot of time in New York, but I am going to New York for a couple days with a very dear friend of mine who I have not seen in 4 years. And she is old enough to be my mom. She's kind of like my surrogate mom.
Mhm.
And we have never taken a girls' trip together. So we're taking a girls' trip.
All right.
Super excited about that. And then planning out our first international trip in a couple years, and have a laundry list of places that we're looking at, not quite sure where we're going. But as I said earlier, like I used to do 3 international trips a year, and I love going
That's
to
really good. Wow.
there's a whole big ass world out there
Yeah.
that I want to see. Um, It's a combination of like going to the typical places like Italy or whatever that
Hmm.
people go. And then I like to go to the off the beaten path places too. I think I mentioned our last trip was to Cambodia.
Hmm.
Not somewhere that most people go, but like really rich culture and history there. And I wanted to go see that and experience that. So we try and balance it with those trips. Um, so yeah, and I am actually thinking about possibly a second book. So
I like it. It's a lot of writing though, but hey,
I have to say, like, for somebody that told the publisher, I can't write that kind of content, it's too much. I, aside from the content or the subject matter of the book, I actually loved the process of writing the book because one thing that was really important to me was that I had creative rights over the book. So I did not let the publisher or the editor touch my content at all, except for like grammar and a little bit of structure.
Mhm.
So every single word in that is my story, my words, literally straight from the horse's mouth. I didn't let them play with the story at all.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed the process of doing that. I think I'm that sort of weirdo ambidextrous person that I'm kind of half data and half creative.
Mhm.
And being able to write that was a little bit of a creative process, not with the content. The content is all factual, but I enjoyed the process of storytelling. It's something that I've done as a marketer and a communicator, career-wise, is to tell stories of brands. This was a little bit different. This was telling a very personal story, but I enjoyed the creative aspect of it.
Mhm. I like it. And then my last question for you is, if you could, I know you mentioned like being outdoors and traveling, but if you could do one thing every day for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Hmm. One thing every day, and I do this anyway, but it's something I love, is I'm a coffee person and I like really good coffee.
Okay.
So like having my cup of coffee that's my moment for the day. Like when I smell that coffee brewing,
Hmm.
I'm still working on the cup of coffee. So,
Yeah.
um, but having that cup of coffee, and even like when I travel, I like to find really good coffee wherever I am, right? And
Mhm.
there's some countries that like they have coffee culture. When I was in Argentina, we actually went to a coffee farm and looked at the whole process.
Yeah.
There was a little coffee shop in Barcelona called Satan's Coffee. It's this little tiny shop and like had amazing coffee.
Mhm.
So my one like thing that makes me happy besides working out, two things actually, having my cup of coffee and my dog. Like I love the fact that I get to spend quality time at home with my dog because I traveled so much for work
Mhm.
that I essentially only lived at home on the weekends. So getting to be at home and spend some catch-up time with the four-legged creature,
Yeah.
that's been nice too.
I love how you I kind of have like a similar hobby as well, coffees, but specifically like taking my laptop and working at different coffee shops, specifically like the mom and pop ones. The ones where it's like you go in there and there's like, I don't know, maybe it was like it used to be auto garage, but now it's like a coffee shop. You can kind of
Yep.
see like the windows used to be like a garage door, just like the small things that kind of gives it character. uh, I'm with you on that
So
one right
here's
there.
here's my offer to you. Next time you're in Atlanta, I'm going to take you to a coffee shop here that I just discovered that actually is a garage. It's a motorcycle garage.
It
Now, I
is,
don't ride. I'm not a motorcycle person,
yeah.
but this place is really, really cool, and they have awesome coffee.
Is it in Smyrna?
It's not, but I know where
By,
you're talking. I know where you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
one?
I used to
You're
go there a
talking about Rev
lot.
Coffee.
Yep, I used to go there a lot.
Yep.
I love that
Nope. This
place.
place is actually it's in Alpharetta and it's called Pops Coffee. And it's
Okay,
inside a Triumph motorcycle dealership.
all right. I guess next
And
time in
it is they
Atlanta.
have awesome coffee there. Like great pour overs, really good coffee, and just a cool environment. So next time you're in Atlanta, we're going to Pops for coffee.
Sounds good. I'll probably be there maybe around like Thanksgiving or Christmas. I haven't figured out that time yet, but I knock out. Yep, I'm gonna hit you
Yep.
up for that right there.
Hit me up. We're
Sounds
going for
good.
coffee.
Yeah, but hey, Lisa, thank you for spending time of your day to really hop on the Finding Your Purpose podcast and sharing your amazing story, you know, and uh as far as like your socials and your website and all that stuff, I'll have it down below in the description. Down below, this is a YouTube podcast, so I can like utilize the description and everyone can go find you there. But yeah, thanks for showing up today and sharing your story. And
Thanks for having me. This
yep,
has been a ton of fun. It's been a great way to spend an hour.
yep, absolutely. All right, that's it for this podcast, you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.